My granddaughter called me at 7 in the morning, and her voice was the flat, careful voice she uses at work. "Grandpa, I need you to listen and not react. Is Uncle Bryce in the house right now?" I said no, he'd left. She let out a breath. "Okay, don't sign anything he gives you. Anything, and don't tell him I called. I pulled your credit report last night. For a case training thing, just to show a rookie how to read one. I used yours because I had your info." She paused. "Grandpa, there are 11 accounts on here. You have 3 credit cards you don't know about, and a second mortgage on your house. We need to talk." Today, I sat down at my kitchen table. My granddaughter investigates financial crimes for the Greensboro police, and she had just found one. In her own family, against her own grandfather. Welcome back to The Forgotten Parent. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to do right by the ones who raised them. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. You're going to want to stay till the end. My name is Dalton Reeves. I am 77 years old. I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, in a small blue house I paid off in 2005. I drive a 2003 Mercury that starts on the first try every morning, which is more than I can say for myself. I wear a Timex. I worked for the post office for 39 years. You learn something, sorting mail for 4 decades. You learn to be careful. You learn that one wrong number, one careless move, and a person's whole life goes to the wrong place. I was never careless, not once. My records are perfect. I keep every statement, every receipt, in labeled folders in a filing cabinet in my study. My late wife Lorraine used to tease me about it. "Dalton, when you die, they'll bury you in a folder, alphabetized. She passed 2 years ago. I keep her card in the L folder. Loved, let me tell you about the post office. Because it made me who I am. I started in 1966. I was 18. My job was simple. Get it right. A single wrong digit sent a letter to the wrong state. A smudged name lost somebody's paycheck. So I learned to check. Then check again. I never trusted my first read. Not once in 39 years. Some men found it tedious. I found it holy. Every letter was somebody's whole heart. A soldier's note home, a birthday check from a grandmother, a rejection, a yes. I carried other people's lives in my hands every day, and I did not drop them. That was the whole job. Do not drop what people trust you with. I believed that so deeply that I never imagined a person could do the opposite on purpose, that a man could take what he was trusted with and throw it in the fire. I didn't have that in me. So I couldn't see it in my son. I met Lorraine in 1968. She worked the counter at the branch on Elm Street. She had a laugh that made grown men buy extra stamps just to hear it again. We were married 49 years. She was the warm one. I was the careful one. Between us we made a whole person. She used to say my folders were my love language. She wasn't wrong. When I couldn't say a thing out loud, I filed it, safe, where it couldn't get lost. I filed our whole life away like that. Every tax return, every school report, every letter she ever wrote me. All of it, alphabetized, in a cabinet in the study. I never dreamed those folders would one day be evidence. I just couldn't stand to lose anything that mattered. It turned out that habit was the only thing standing between me and a pauper's grave. I have one son. His name is Bryce. Bryce is 49, and Bryce has always wanted a bigger life than the one a careful man can give him. He wanted the boat, the watch, the vacations he posts online. He sold insurance, then mortgages, then something else, and he always seemed to be doing well, and he was always, somehow, broke. After Lorraine died, Bryce started coming around more. I was grateful, at first. He said he wanted to help me manage things. "Dad, you shouldn't have to deal with all this paperwork alone. Let me handle the mail, the bills, the online stuff. You've earned a rest, and a careful man, A lonely, careful man who'd just lost his wife said yes. I handed my son the keys to my whole financial life. It is the single worst decision I have ever made. Here's what I didn't know. For 2 years, while he smiled at my kitchen table and called himself my helper, my son was stealing my name. Not my money, exactly, my name. My identity. The thing I spent 39 careful years never once staining. He opened credit cards in my name and maxed them. He took out a second mortgage on my paid-off house, forging my signature, and pocketed the cash. He redirected my mail so I'd never see the statements. He drained a retirement account I thought was untouched. $300,000 in my name. On my credit. While I sat in my chair thinking my helpful boy was taking care of things, I should have seen it. The signs were there. Bryce had always been a little loose with money and a lot loose with the truth. As a teenager, he forged my name on a report card. I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. He borrowed from me for 30 years and never paid a cent back. 9,000 once. 12 another time. I stopped counting because counting felt like giving up on him. When Lorraine was dying, he asked me about her life insurance before he asked how she was doing. I told myself grief made people strange. I am very good at telling myself things about my son. It is the softest and stupidest place in me. And he knew right where it was. He'd known since he was a boy. A con man learns his first mark at home. I just never let myself see that the mark was me. The moment he offered to handle my paperwork, a smarter man would have heard the click of a lock. I heard a kind son. That's the trick of it. They don't break in. You hand them the key. You hand it over with gratitude, because you're lonely and tired, and he's your boy, and it's so nice to have help. I gave my son the key to my whole life and thanked him for taking it. I'd started to feel that something was wrong. Little things. A card got declined at the grocery store, and I was embarrassed, and Bryce said, "Oh, the bank flagged some fraud, Dad. I'm handling it." A man called the house about a debt, and Bryce took the phone and said, "Scammers, Dad. Don't worry about it." He had an answer for everything. A smooth, kind, reassuring answer. And a lonely old man who trusted his son wanted to believe every one of them. That's the part they count on. Not that you're stupid, that you love them, and love makes you look away. I want to tell you the loneliest part. It wasn't the money. It was realizing, sitting at that table with my granddaughter's voice in my ear, that my own son had looked at me every single day for 2 years and seen a mark. Not a father, a resource. An old man too trusting and too tired to check. He talked to me so gently while he emptied me out. Some of you know this exact feeling. The person who calls you dad while treating you like an ATM. The child who only comes around when there's something to take. It is a specific kind of heartbreak to be robbed by someone you would have given it to freely if they'd only asked. If you've made it this far, do me one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you, genuinely. Now let me tell you about my granddaughter. Her name is Naya. She's 29. She is Bryce's daughter, which makes this story harder and truer. Nia investigates financial crimes for the police. Elder fraud is her specialty. She spends her days catching people who do exactly what her father was doing. And when she pulled that credit report, half as a training exercise, and half, I think, because some instinct in her had been uneasy for a while, she found her own grandfather's ruin written across the page. 11 accounts, a forged mortgage, a debt that would have followed me to my grave. She did not call her father. She called me. And in that choice, my granddaughter told me everything about the kind of person she is. Let me tell you why Naya is good at what she does. She grew up watching her father charm his way out of everything. She learned young to tell the difference between a smile and the truth. Most kids of a man like Bryce grow up to be him, or to be his victims. Naya grew up to be the person who catches him. She told me once that she chose financial crimes because somebody has to protect the people who still trust. She meant old people. She meant people like me. She spends her days sitting with grandmothers who got cleaned out by a sweet voice on the phone, a fake grandson, a helpful new friend. She has seen 100 versions of what happened to me. She knew the pattern in her sleep. What she never expected was to find the pattern with her own family's fingerprints on it. When she saw my name on that report, she told me later, her hands went cold because she knew, before she'd read a single line, exactly whose work it was. A daughter knows her father's handwriting, even when it's forging someone else's. She came over that afternoon. She sat at my kitchen table, in her plain clothes with a folder of her own, and she was so gentle and so furious at the same time. She said, "Grandpa, I have to ask you some hard questions, and I have to ask them like a detective, not a granddaughter. Is that okay?" I told her to do her job, and she did. She walked me through every account, every forged signature, and with each one I felt something I did not expect. Not just anger, a cold, clear focus. Because I am a careful man, and careful men, when they finally see the fault, do not panic. They document. Nia walked me through it, one line at a time. It was worse than I imagined. A credit card opened in 2022, maxed at $11,000. A second card, maxed at $9,000. A store card, a car loan for a car I never saw. The second mortgage, $68,000, forged and gone. A personal loan for $40,000. My retirement account, the one I thought was safe, drained to almost nothing over 18 quiet months. He'd been careful, in his way, small amounts at first. Then, bigger. The way a thief gets bolder when nobody stops him. $304,000, all told. On the name of a man who never once bounced a check in his life. I looked at those numbers and I did not cry. I got quiet. The quiet Lorraine used to call my dangerous quiet. She'd say, "Uh-oh, Dalton's gone quiet. Somebody's in trouble now." She was usually right. Here's the thing my son forgot. He thought he'd controlled all the paperwork. He'd redirected the mail, handled the bills, kept me in the dark. But he didn't know about the filing cabinet. 39 years of habit. I keep copies of everything. Paper copies. Every real statement, every real tax form, every real account I'd ever opened, alphabetized in a locked drawer he never thought to look in. Because who keeps paper anymore? A careful old postal worker, that's who. So when Nia needed to prove which accounts were really mine and which were forged, which signatures were true and which were faked, I opened that drawer and I handed my detective granddaughter 2 years of clean, dated, organized evidence that my son never knew existed. She looked at it and she started to cry. She said, "Grandpa, this is a perfect case file. You built a perfect case file and you didn't even know you were doing it." I told her I'd been building it for 40 years. I just never dreamed what it would be for, so we got very quiet, the two of us, and we made a plan, and this is the part I want you to hear, because it's the heart of it. We did not confront Bryce. Not yet. A careful man does not tip his hand. Nia said if we accused him, he'd destroy evidence, lawyer up, hide the money. She said, "Grandpa, I need him to keep doing what he's doing, just a little longer, while I build it the right way. Can you keep pretending you don't know? Can you look him in the eye and let him think he's still winning?" I told her I sorted mail through 3 postmaster generals and a hurricane. I can keep a straight face. So I did. For 6 weeks, I let my son keep helping me. I smiled at his lies. I let him hand me his kind, smooth answers. And every night, after he left, I called Nia and told her exactly what he'd said and done, and she wrote it all down. And the case grew, quiet and perfect, in the dark. It was the hardest 6 weeks of my life. Do you know what it costs to hug the person who's robbing you? To say thanks for your help, son, to a man forging your name? It aged me, but I'd learned patience sorting mail at 4 in the morning. And I'd learned something else from Nia, watching her work. She told me, the ones who get caught are the ones who get greedy and rush. The ones who never get caught are patient. So we're going to be more patient than he is. We were. There was one moment in those 6 weeks I'll carry forever. It was my birthday. Bryce came over. He brought a cake. He'd written "Happy Birthday, Dad" on it himself. He sat at my table. He smiled. He told me he loved me. He asked if I needed help with anything. And I knew. I knew every number he'd stolen. I knew the mail he'd hidden. I knew he'd mortgaged the house I was sitting in. And I ate a slice of that cake, and I said, "Thank you, son. This means a lot." It was the finest acting of my life, and it nearly killed me. Because a small, stupid, hopeful part of me kept whispering, maybe he does love you. Maybe a person can rob you blind and love you at the same time. I've decided that they can. That's the worst part. It wasn't that he didn't love me. It's that he loved me and did it anyway. Love wasn't enough to stop him. It never even slowed him down. The trap was simple, in the end. Nia had enough for an arrest, but she wanted him to incriminate himself clean, on the record, no wiggle room. So we set up a moment. I told Bryce I'd gotten a scary letter from the bank about the second mortgage, and that I was confused, and could he explain it to me? Just father and son at the kitchen table. What Bryce didn't know was that the meeting was consented, recorded, and that 2 detectives, one of them not my granddaughter, were parked outside. And my son, thinking he was smoothing over one more worry for his foolish old dad, sat at my table and explained the second mortgage. He said he'd handled the paperwork for me. He said he'd signed some things to make it easier. He walked right into it, gentle and smooth, certain I'd believe whatever he said, because I always had. Every word was another nail. He built his own cell, sentence by sentence, at the same table where he ate his childhood dinners. I want you to understand what that hour cost me. I sat across from my boy, the boy I taught to ride a bike on Elm Street, the boy whose fevers I sat up with. And I listened to him lie to my face, smooth as ever, certain as ever, and I nodded along like the fool he'd decided I was. My hands were steady. My voice was kind. Inside, something was breaking that will never quite mend. Because a father spends his whole life hoping he was wrong about the worst thing he suspects. And in that hour, at that table, with the recorder running, I ran out of ways to be wrong. He was exactly what the evidence said. Every word he spoke closed the last door I'd been holding open for him in my heart. That's the real price of a trap like this. You don't just catch them, you finally stop hoping. And the hoping, it turns out, was the last warm thing I had. When he finished, I looked at my son. And for the first time in 6 weeks, I stopped pretending. I said, "Bryce, did you forge my name on a mortgage for my house?" He started his smooth answer. "Dad, it's not like." And the door opened, and the detectives came in, and Nia came in behind them, and my son's face did the thing I will never forget. It fell. All the smoothness, all the confidence, gone in a single second. He looked at his own daughter standing there with her badge, and he understood everything at once. He said, "Nia, baby, what did you do?" And she said, in the flattest, saddest voice I've ever heard, "My job, Dad. You made me choose." And I chose him. She pointed at me. The grandfather. The mark. The one he thought no one was watching. My son was arrested at my kitchen table for identity theft, forgery, and financial exploitation of an elder. And I want to be clear about something, because I know some of you are soft-hearted, and I love you for it. I thought about mercy. He's my son. But he didn't make one mistake in a weak moment. He robbed me, methodically, for 2 years, $300,000 and redirected my mail so I'd die not knowing. That is not a mistake. That is a campaign. And a campaign like that earns the full weight of the law, or the next old man he'd have found earns nothing but a warning that came too late. So I did not ask for leniency. Bryce is serving 4 years. Restitution is ordered, though I'll likely never see most of it back. That's all right. I didn't do it for the money. I did it so he could never do it to anyone else. Nia did something quietly heroic in all this that I have to tell you about. She turned in her own father. Do you understand what that cost her? She could have looked away. Family looks away all the time. That's how these things go on for years. But she didn't. She chose her grandfather, and she chose the truth, and she chose every future old person her father would have targeted. It nearly broke her. She sat with me the night after the arrest and cried until there was nothing left, and she said, "Did I do the right thing?" And I held my granddaughter and I told her the truest thing I know. You did the thing that was right and hard instead of the thing that was wrong and easy. That's the only real choice a person ever makes. And you made it. Your grandmother would be so proud she'd bake a cake she'd never let anyone eat. Nia moved in with me for a while. After, neither of us said why. She said it was to help with the paperwork. We both knew it was so 2 broken people wouldn't have to be alone in the dark. We have coffee together every morning now. She goes to work catching the next Bryce. She comes home and tells me about the grandmothers she saved that day. I keep her a plate warm. We don't talk about her father much. Some nights she cries a little at the sink and I pretend not to see, because a person deserves to cry without an audience. She did the bravest thing I've ever watched anyone do. She turned in her own blood to save a stranger she'd never meet. There should be a medal for that. There isn't. So I tell her every single morning, "You did right, Nia. She needs to hear it." So do I. I think a lot about how close it came. If Nia hadn't pulled that report, if I died first, the way old men do. My son would have buried me, cried the right amount at the funeral, and walked away with my house and my name and a clean story. Nobody would ever have known. That's the part that chills me. Not that it happened. That it almost worked perfectly. The quiet crimes against old people almost always do. We're trusting. We're tired. We love the ones robbing us. And we die before the bill comes due. I got lucky. I had a granddaughter who watches for a living. Most don't. That's why I'm telling you this. Check your own accounts, not because you're weak. Because the people who love you are exactly the ones positioned to hurt you, and love is the one thing that makes you stop looking. My credit is being repaired. Slowly, the forged mortgage was voided once the forgery was proven, thanks to that filing cabinet. The bank, once they saw the case Nia built on the bones of my perfect records, was quick to make it right. My house is mine again, paid off, the way Lorraine and I earned it. I still keep my folders. I keep them better than ever now. And I added a new one, in the front, labeled with a single word. Nia. People ask me if I hate him. I've thought about it honestly. I don't think I do. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on Nia, and on my mornings, and on the tomatoes I've started growing along the back fence because Lorraine always wanted them there. What I feel is simpler and sadder than hate. I feel done. There's a folder in my cabinet marked with his name. It's the thinnest one in the drawer now. It used to be full of report cards and drawings and a boy's whole childhood. Now it holds a case number and a court date and nothing else. I put his childhood somewhere else, in a box I don't open. A father learns to keep the boy and the man in separate rooms. It's the only way to survive loving both. I mourn the boy. I keep my distance from the man. And I don't apologize to anyone for either. Nia asked me once if I'd have done anything differently. I told her yes. Just one thing, I'd have checked. Not because I didn't trust him, but because trusting him and checking on him were never the opposite of each other, the way I thought they were. You can love someone completely and still read your own bank statement. Those two things can live in the same house. I know that now. I learned it at 77 at a kitchen table from a girl with a badge who happens to be the best of all of us. Better late than in the ground, Lorraine would say. I want to leave you with something an old postal worker learned the hard way. Be careful with your name. It's the one thing you own that no one can give back if it's taken. Keep your records. Keep your copies. Not because you don't trust your family, but because the day may come when the person smiling at your table is the one you need the paper against, and by then it's too late to start keeping it. I sorted mail for 39 years and never lost a letter. It turned out the most important thing I ever kept safe was myself, in a locked drawer, waiting for the day a good girl with a badge would need it. Be careful and raise your grandchildren to watch. You never know which one is paying attention. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being part of this family.